The Lonely Planet. Captain Leo stood on the edge of the great forest, a place where the trees touched the sky and the leaves glowed with a strange, soft light. His spaceship, the Wayfarer, was a silver dot in the distance, a small piece of home on this very big and very lonely planet. His mission was simple: survey the life here, check the air, and report back to Earth. It was a mission for one person, and Leo had been alone for months. He was a man of routines. Every morning he would check his equipment, look at the star map, and then walk into the forest to collect samples. He was used to the silence of this world. There were no birds, no small animals making noise. Just the wind, a quiet hum from the glowing plants, and his own footsteps. He felt safe, but always a little on edge. The forest was beautiful, but it was also a mystery. Today was different. The air was still and heavy, and even the humming of the plants seemed quieter. As he walked deeper into the forest, a new sound came to his ears. It was a soft, high-pitched noise, not a cry of pain, but something like a sad song or a gentle plea. It was not natural for this place. Leo stopped and listened. His hand went to the laser pistol on his belt, just in case. The sound led him to a clearing, a small open space where the glowing plants grew very close together. There, he saw it. A girl, a young alien girl, was trapped. A large, dark red plant had wrapped its thick vines around her. The vines were so tight they were almost invisible against her smooth violet skin. She was trying to move, but the plant held her fast. Her eyes, which were a bright silver color, looked at him with a mix of fear and surprise. Leo's mind went blank. He was supposed to stay away from the life forms here. That was the first rule of his mission. But a young girl was in danger. He couldn't just stand there and watch. He put his pistol away and pulled out a small cutting tool from his bag. He had to be fast. He stepped out of the shadows and walked toward her. The girl saw him. Her silver eyes got even wider, and she let out a small, scared sound. Leo held up his hands to show her he meant no harm. He spoke slowly. "It's okay. I'm here to help." Of course, she didn't understand him, but maybe the tone of his voice would help. He pointed to the plant and then to himself, trying to say, "I will cut you free." The strange red plant seemed to feel his presence. Its vines tightened around the girl. She gave a small gasp. Leo moved faster. He knelt down, being careful not to touch the glowing plants on the ground. He put the cutting tool on the thickest vine, turned it on, and with a quiet hum, it sliced through the plant. He kept working, cutting one vine after another. He had to be careful not to hurt her. She watched him, her eyes following his every move. He could see a small tear in her silver eye. After a few tense minutes, the last vine was cut. The girl's body fell to the ground. She was free. She lay there for a moment, catching her breath. Leo offered her his hand. She looked at it for a moment, confused. Then, she quickly got to her feet. She looked at the cut vines, then back at Leo. Her expression was a mix of wonder and relief. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture he had never seen before, and then she turned and ran. She disappeared into the trees as quickly as she had appeared. Leo was left alone again, but the silence was gone. The air felt charged, different. He picked up his tools and put them away. He knew he had broken the rules of his mission, but he didn't feel bad about it. He had saved a life. Just as he was about to turn back toward his ship, he felt it. A soft, low vibration started in the ground. It was like the deep rumble of a distant thunder, but he felt it through the soles of his boots. He looked around, but nothing was there. The vibration grew stronger, a slow but powerful thrumming that came from deeper inside the forest. It was getting closer, and it was not a sound of nature. It was the sound of a great number of footsteps coming straight for him. The silent arrival. The ground trembled more strongly now, a rhythmic drumming that was too regular to be natural. It wasn't the sound of an animal or a storm, it was the sound of purpose. Captain Leo's heart pounded in his chest, a fast drum against the slow one of the approaching footsteps. He quickly grabbed his bag, scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. The air was heavy, charged with an energy that made the small hairs on his arms stand up. Then he saw them. They didn't burst through the trees or make a loud entrance. Instead, they appeared as if the forest had simply let them through. Tall, powerful women with the same violet skin and bright silver eyes as the girl he had saved. They moved with a silent, synchronized grace, each step perfectly placed. There were dozens of them, maybe more. They carried simple but dangerous-looking weapons, long spears tipped with glowing rock, and bows with bright, humming arrows. They formed a silent circle around him, their movements so fluid and precise that Leo felt like he was caught in a living net. They didn't speak. They didn't yell or show any anger. They just stood there, watching him with an intense, unreadable gaze. Their faces were calm, but their eyes held a strange mix of power and judgment. It wasn't a look of aggression, but something far more serious. It was as if they were here to make a decision about him. Leo froze. His hand was a few inches from his pistol, but he knew that drawing it would be a mistake. Their silence was more intimidating than any roar. He looked from face to face, trying to find a sign, any sign, of their intentions. Was this a rescue party? A search party for the lost girl? Or was this a revenge party for something he had done without knowing? The sheer number of them and their perfect, unblinking stillness made the blood run cold in his veins. A tall figure at the front stepped forward. She was a bit older than the others, with a long white braid woven into her hair. Her presence was different, heavier. She held her spear pointed at the ground, a sign of non-aggression, but her eyes held a fire that made Leo hold his breath. She walked slowly, circling him, her eyes never leaving his. She was not just looking at him, she was studying him, judging every detail. Finally, she stopped directly in front of him. Her eyes dropped to the ground and she pointed with her spear to the spot where the red plant had been, the spot where he had saved the girl. The cut vines were still there, and the plant was a black, dying mess. Then, she raised her hand and pointed to him. Her meaning was clear, a question that needed no words. "What did you do?" The unspoken question, the silence, was the heaviest thing Leo had ever felt. The leader stood before him, her eyes fixed on his, her spear pointed at the dying plant. Her posture was not a threat but a command. It was a demand for an answer. Leo knew that words were useless here. He had to communicate in a way that all species understood, with actions. He lowered his bag to the ground, a sign of peace. He then walked slowly to the remains of the dark red plant. The cut vines were still there, like the broken fingers of a monster. He knelt down, then pointed at the plant and made a cutting motion with his hand, as if holding a knife. He poked at the leader and made a chopping motion with his hand. His message was simple. "I cut the plant." The leader did not react. Her expression remained calm and watchful. She tilted her head slightly, as if inviting him to continue. Leo stood up and used his body to tell the rest of the story. He acted out the girl's predicament, raising his arms and wrapping them around his own body as if he were trapped. He showed her struggles, shaking his head and moving his arms as if trying to get free. He then pointed to himself, then to the girl's empty spot, and then back to the plant, trying to say, the girl was trapped by this plant. Next, he acted out the rescue. He knelt down again and pretended to cut the vines one by one. He mimed helping the girl up and giving her freedom. He pointed to the trees where she had run away. His hands moved with a clear purpose, showing that he was a helper, not a hunter. He ended with a gesture, holding his hand over his heart and then out to the tribe, showing that his act came from a place of kindness. The leader and the others watched his every move. Their stillness was incredible. Leo felt like he was on a stage, but instead of applause, he was waiting for a judgment. He finished his mime and stood still, looking at the leader, waiting for her reaction. He had shown them the truth as best he could. Now, it was up to them to believe him. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The forest was so quiet you could hear the soft humming of the living plants. The only sounds were Leo's own shaky breaths. He looked into the leader's eyes, trying to see if she understood, if she believed him. The silence was almost unbearable. The shocking reaction. The silence was heavier than ever. Captain Leo stood perfectly still, his heart a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He had finished his story, but the leader's face remained a perfect mask. He waited for her to yell, to raise her spear, to do something. He was ready for a fight, but not for what happened next. A strange change came over the leader. The hard line of her mouth softened, and her eyes, which had been so cold and judging, now held a deep respect. It was a brief flicker, but it was there. She lowered her spear, and then, slowly, with a fluid motion, she knelt down on both knees. Her head bowed, and she held the spear in front of her, the point resting on the ground. Leo's eyes widened. He had no idea what this meant. Then, the other women acted. As if they were one single body, all of them knelt at the exact same moment. The sound of their movements was like a soft rustle of leaves in the wind. They all held their spears in the same position as their leader, their faces looking at the ground. Leo was stunned. This was not a surrender or an attack. This was a show of deep, deep honor. He, a single human, stood before a tribe of armed women who were now kneeling to him. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The leader looked up at him, her face still full of respect. She reached into a small pouch on her belt and pulled out a flat, glowing stone. It was a beautiful thing, with the light of the forest trapped inside it. She held it out to him, her hand open and waiting. Slowly, carefully, Leo took a step forward. He knelt on one knee to meet her. As his fingers closed around the stone, he felt a warm energy spread through his hand. It was a promise, a gift, and a bond all at once. The leader gave him a nod, a small, knowing movement of her head. He had passed a test he didn't even know he was taking. She then stood up, and the rest of the women stood up with her. Their expressions were now soft, almost peaceful. They no longer looked at him as a threat or a stranger, but as someone important. In one simple act of kindness, Leo had saved more than just a girl. He had earned the respect of an entire tribe. He stood there, a simple human holding a jilal, owing alien stone, and knew that his world had just changed forever, a new kind of life. The tribe led Captain Leo deep into the forest, but not in a straight line. They moved through hidden paths, past trees that seemed to shift and change shape. After a long walk, they arrived at a place that took his breath away. High up in the massive trees, connected by long, rope-like bridges, was a city. It was not a city of stone or metal, but of living wood and woven plants. Lanterns made of glowing crystals lit the paths, and the air smelled of sweet flowers and clean rain. Leo walked across the first bridge, the woven vines feeling soft under his boots. Below, he could see the forest floor, and he finally understood. This was not a prison. It was a home. He wasn't a captive. He was a guest. He looked at the women around him, and their faces were no longer serious. They were smiling, and some of them gestured for him to look at the wonders of their home. He was taken to a small hut high in a tall tree. The inside was simple but beautiful, with soft beds made of moss and a small table carved from wood. The leader, whose name he still did not know, showed him how to use a water dispenser and pointed to a bowl of fresh fruit. She then left him alone, giving him space to process everything. In the days that followed, Leo learned more about this amazing tribe. He realized they were a society of only women. He watched them work, hunt, and live in perfect harmony. They had no need for metal or machines, as their technology was all biological. They could make plants grow faster, and they used glowing insects for light. Their lives were simple, peaceful, and balanced. One evening he was sitting with the leader, watching the twin moons rise. He had managed to communicate some basic ideas with her through a mix of gestures and sounds. He pointed to the small glowing stone he still carried and then to the planet. She understood. She took a stick and drew in the dirt. She drew the planet and then drew the tribe of women. Then she drew a single tall tree at the center of the drawing. much bigger than the others. She pointed to it, then to the girl he had saved, and then to a small, glowing symbol on the stone. Leo's mind raced. He had saved a young girl, but he had not understood her importance. The girl he had helped was not just a member of the tribe. She was the future leader. The glowing stone was a symbol of their queen. By saving her, he had saved the future of their entire society. He had not just performed an act of kindness, he had performed a heroic act on a level he could not have imagined. He, a simple human from Earth, was now their honored protector, their savior. The tribe's shocking reaction now made perfect sense. He had not just come to their world, he had become a part of it, a new danger. Life with the tribe was a quiet adventure. Captain Leo spent his days learning about their peaceful ways. He watched how they used glowing insects for light, and how they could make food grow just by singing to the plants. It was a simple, beautiful life, a world away from the busy, loud planets he had known. He felt more at home here than he had in a very long time. The women of the tribe treated him with deep respect. He was not just a guest, but a valued member of their family. One afternoon, the leader, whose name was Luna, took him to the outer edge of their tree city. She looked out at the forest below, and her calm face was filled with worry. She pointed to the ground and then to the small, dark red plants, the same kind of plants that had trapped their future queen. Leo's heart sank. He looked closer and saw something terrible. The dark red plants were not just growing, they were spreading. They were moving in a slow, silent wave toward the tribe's city. Their vines were thick and they wrapped around everything in our path. The plants were a danger to the tribe, and it was clear that the women had no idea how to stop them. Their peaceful way of life had not prepared them for a threat like this. Luna explained with a mix of gestures and simple sounds that the plants were the creeping shadow. She showed him small black spots on the leaves of the trees below, a sign that the plants were taking over. The glowing hum of the forest was getting quieter, and the air was becoming heavy and still. The plants were slowly draining the life from the forest, and soon they would reach the city. Leo thought about his own world, Earth, and its history. He knew that when humans faced a threat, they didn't just sing to it or watch it grow. They studied it, and they found a way to fight back with science and technology. He looked at the women around him. They were strong, brave, and kind, but they didn't have the tools to fight this kind of enemy. He held up his hand and said, "I have an idea. I can help." Luna looked at him, hope in her eyes. She put her hand on his arm and nodded. They had put their faith in him before, and they would do it again. Leo knew that this was a test, a chance to prove his worth not as a savior from a single event, but as a true partner. The creeping shadow was coming, and he had to use everything he knew to protect his new home. The true hero. The next morning, Captain Leo led the tribe to the part of the forest where the dark red plants were spreading the fastest. He had a simple plan. He took out his small tools from his bag, a portable saw, a light-up scanner, and a few small metal objects. He pointed to the plants and then to his tools. Luna and the other women watched with a quiet interest. They had only ever used natural things to solve their problems. Leo used his tools to show them how to cut the plants at the root so they could not grow back. He showed them how his light-up scanner could find the weakest parts of the plants. Most importantly, he showed them how to build simple blockades from hardwood to slow the plants down. It was slow work, but the women were smart. They watched his every move, and soon they were using his tools and following his plan with perfect skill. They worked together for days. The women were strong and fast, using their knowledge of the forest to move quickly through the trees. Leo used his science and his tools. He found that the plants did not like a certain chemical from his ship's air system. He showed the women how to spray the plants' roots with this chemical, making them shrivel and die. It was a new kind of magic for them, and they were amazed. The final fight came a week later. The creeping shadow had almost reached the first bridge to the city. The tribe stood ready with their spears, but this time they also had Leo's tools and his knowledge. When the plants reached the blockade, Leo and the women worked together, a perfect team. The women held back the vines with their spears, while Leo and others used the chemical spray and the cutting tools to defeat the main plants. It was a tough fight, but they won. The last of the dark red plants fell silent, and the glowing hum of the forest slowly returned. The air became clear and light once more. The tribe was safe. The women gathered around Leo. Their faces were no longer filled with worry, but with a deep, silent joy. Luna stepped forward and took his hand. She did not kneel this time. Instead, she looked him in the eyes and said a word he had never heard before. He didn't need to know the meaning to understand. The word was full of thanks, respect, and a new kind of love. Captain Leo, the simple human who had come to this world on a lonely mission, had found his true place. He had not just saved a girl, he had saved an entire culture. His single act of kindness, an act that had broken all his rules, had changed his life forever. He was no longer alone. He had found a family in the stars. The end. Enjoyed too. Story? Like it and subscribe for more.